Welcome to another video about creepy Christmas creatures or creepy holiday creatures. Holiday horrors? I don't know. I never gave this a name. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. It is officially the 12 days of Christmas right now. If you thought the 12 days of Christmas were leading up to Christmas, it's actually the opposite. The 12 days of Christmas actually happen after Christmas. So what's really interesting is that a lot of these monsters, their legends and lore are actually tied with the 12 days of Christmas, like Frau Perchta and Grilla. I want to talk to you about a creature known as the Kallikantzaros, or the Kallikantzaroi for the plural version. So like the other legends I've talked about, the Kallikantzaroi has ties with the 12 days of Christmas. Now, in case the name didn't give it away, the Kallikantzaros or the Karakoncolos comes from Greece. Now, there's also variations of this legend in Serbia, Bulgaria, Albania, Cyprus. The list that's actually pretty long. So the Kallikantzaros are malevolent little goblins that come out during the 12 days of Christmas. Now, in their off-season, during the other parts of the year, they are actually living underground and they are trying to cut down this tree known as the World Tree. Now, this is serious business because if the World Tree goes down, so does the Earth itself. But when the 12 days of Christmas rolls around, these little malevolent goblins can come to the surface and they abandon their tree cutting plans for the sake of terrorizing the mortals. And this continues until Epiphany, which is on January 6th, so when the sun starts moving again, and then the Kallikantzaros go back underground and they resume their tree cutting adventures. But in their absence, the World Tree has actually healed itself, so that means the Kallikantzaros have to start all over and start their cutting adventures again. So this continues, the cycle continues throughout the year, and it just repeats itself every Epiphany. So in case you couldn't tell, if they've had to restart their tree cutting plans every year without catching on to the fact that, well, maybe this is something we should keep going at and not abandon every 12 days of Christmas, yeah, you've probably caught on that these guys aren't very smart. In fact, they're actually not seen so much as evil, but more impish and stupid. As always, when I talk about a legend, I always like to talk about where it comes from. So, it is believed that the Kallikantzaros were inspired by legends from ancient Greece and ancient Rome, or more specifically, their winter festivals. So every winter, ancient Rome celebrated Bacchanalia, which was basically people would dress up in costumes, they would wear masks, they would look like humanoid beasts, and there would be drinking, debauchery, and lots of intimacy with multiple people at the same time. Brown chicken, brown cow. Yes, so basically what this means is that they were having fun, trying to keep the somewhat good rating on this channel. So in ancient Greece, not necessarily in winter, but during March, there would be the festival of Dionysus. Now, Dionysus is the Greek god of theater, so his festival would be mainly surrounded with theatrical performances and drama and poetry, less debauchery and more theatrics and acting. So Dionysus also happens to be my favorite Greek god because theater. What is really interesting about the Kallikantzaros is they actually have some consistencies when it comes to what they look like, but depending on which region or which country you're looking at, then they might look a little bit different. In some places they have hairy bodies, they have boar tusks for teeth, and they have horse legs. Sometimes they were really big and sometimes they were small humans and they were like small and hairy and really stinky. Then in other parts of Greece they were said to have big heads, red eyes, big hanging tongues, and they would have protruding male parts, meaning they had a really big and they also had like goat or donkey ears. But the most popular and most common belief is that they are small, little hairy creatures with long black tails, and they looked a lot like little devils. And sometimes they've also been portrayed as blind, and they love to eat like little small creatures like worms and frogs, plus speaking with a lisp, which is interesting. So you might be wondering, where does a Kallikantzaros come from? Like, are they born from like some weird like creature, or are they like something that come into existence from fairies? No, they're actually people. Well, they used to be people. It is said that if a baby is born during the 12 days of Christmas, then it could transform into a Kallikantzaros during the holiday season once they reach adulthood. Now, it's also said that a baby that is born on a Saturday is also at risk for transforming into a Kallikantzaros during the holiday season when they hit adulthood. But if you don't want your children, your little bundle of joy, to turn into a Kallikantzaros, there's something you can do. You can bind your baby's legs and feet with tresses of garlic and straw, which might be a little stinky, and you can singe their toenails in the fireplace. Ouch. So this sounds kind of like a weird Christmas werewolf thing. So we've talked about the Kallikantzaros, kallikantzaroi, what they look like, how they come into being, but how do you avoid them? So this is interesting. So in Greece, if you want to avoid an interaction with a kallikantzaros, you can actually leave a colander outside your front door. So like I mentioned before, the kallikantzaroi is known as not being incredibly smart. In fact, they're known as being stupid. So they can't actually count higher than 2 because the number 3 is considered to be a holy number. And if they say the number 3, then they risk of killing themselves. But if you put a colander outside their front door, which this kind of reminds me of fairy lore, they can't help but want to count all the holes in the colander. Yes, the same thing that you use to drain your spaghetti can actually help protect you against a kallikantzaros. So because they can't count higher than 2, but they can't help but count all the holes in the colander, you're basically making the kallikantzaros waste its time until the sun comes up. And once the sun comes up, the kallikantzaros has to go back into hiding into the darkness from whence it came. Now, if you're doing the keto diet or you're low carb and you don't have a colander for other things, then you can actually do another thing. You can mark a black cross on the door and that will protect you. You can also leave a fire burning at night so that the kallikantzaros can't go down the chimney into your home. Now, if you really want to clear the area of the kallikantzaroi, then you can actually burn your stinky shoes in the fireplace, and the smell is enough to repulse them away from your home. So earlier in this video, I mentioned that the kallikantzaros can be found in other countries. In Albania, the kallikantzaros is known as the kukith. So I like this variation because it's very much a zombie. So basically this is an undead creature that roams the streets in January while carrying chains and has really stinky breath. However, I don't really know a zombie that doesn't have stinky breath. In Serbia, the kallikantzaroi is known as the Karakonžula. Yeah, I said that right. Karakonžula. And they came out during the 12 days of Christmas as normal. At one point, people in Serbia believed that the 12 days of Christmas were unbaptized days, so these were considered to be unholy days. And so basically this meant that demons and monsters were more active and dangerous. And Serbians were told not to do anything that would attract their attention. Mainly, don't go out at night. So the Karakonžula was a short, heavy-set creature that would jump on its victims' backs and demand that it carry them wherever they wanted to go. And this would continue until the sun came up and the rooster crowed. What I found interesting is that people are suggested to not do anything to attract the attention of a Karakonžula, like going out at night. So this particular bit of Serbian lore was actually targeting adulterers because it was strongly believed that those who committed adultery were committing their sins in the quiet of the night. So in this instance, for adultery, it is believed that the Karakonžula will actually hang out on the doorframe of the lover's house or the doorframe of a brothel, and when the adulterer came out, the Karakonžula would jump onto the backs of the adulterer, dig its nails and claws into its skin, and make them run around the forest until the sun came up, basically until dawn. So punishment for being an adulterer. Now, in Anatolian folklore, the kallikantzaroi were known as the Karakoncolos, and they were a Sasquatch-like creature that emerged during the 10 days of Zemheri, also known as the Dreadful Cold. And they would stand on murky corners and ask questions to the people who walked by them. Now, these weren't really considered to be so much as dangerous, but they did have some trickster tendencies. So the Karakoncolos would actually mimic the voice of a person that someone loved, and they would actually beckon that someone to come out and answer their questions. So as long as you answered the questions of the Karakoncolos, you were safe. Finally, in Bulgaria, the Karakonžul or the Karakonjo was actually a shapeshifter type creature that could transform itself into a goat, a dog, and even a man. But in its normal form, it had a really big head, and it had horns, a tail, and a hairy body. I think the general consensus for these creatures is that they were hairy. It could also have one leg or the legs of a horse. And it typically lived in caves, watermills, and rivers. To dissuade these evil creatures from coming around, there was a a ritual, this big festival event known as the Kokeri, and that was used to, to scare away evil spirits and evil creatures. So what do you think of the Kallikantzaros, or the Karakontzoroi, or the Karakonjul, Karakoncolos? So what do you think of this creature? And feel free to tell me your creepy Christmas legend in the comments. And before you go today, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, give this video a like, and feel free to share it with your friends. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you next time.